Welcome back. Tricks from the Foxerie Clinical Psychologist. This is episode 9 of learning to build social confidence. And we're still exploring the ego and ego dynamics. In this episode, we're going to start with our classic it world. There it is. And here is the immature, or let's be polite, developing ego. This is me. Here I am, and here is it world, full of mana, full of energy, full of life, full of craziness, full of whatevs, and so on. Let's call it, right in black today, a little bit easier to read on the screen. It. Okay, so we know now that the journey, or the developmental journey for the ego, is to somehow push against it world and become its own consolidated or whole or separate person. Yet, big yet, just to hold that in mind, still retain some connection to it world. So it's not completely disconnected. Now remember, it never disconnects from this energy. And this energy is always fueling, you could say, fueling the ego on some level with fantasies, and as I said in the last episode, we called this energy mana. We're just giving it a name. Freud called it libido. Carl Jung libido. It's pretty. Some people call it psychic energy. I call it mana. Mana's way sexier. Okay, so how to get the ego to journey outwards? We know that the parent or parent figure has something to do with it. Today I'm going to talk about another thing. This comes out of self-psychology, Heinz Kohut, the self-object, and what that means to you as an individual. So let's clear the deck a little bit. Let's get rid of this, and we'll just redraw some of this part here. Might just get rid of that. All right, let's start fresh. Okay, there's me. I'm still, swimming in it energy, in mana. I'm a bit regressed like a child. I still think of myself as the center of the universe, and so on and so on. Okay, now, the idea of a self-object is a little bit technical sounding. It might take a couple of videos to understand this, but it has to do with the dynamic called projection, or transference if you prefer, and we'll see what I mean by that. Let's suppose this is me still regressed in my it world, full of fantasy, full of, childishness, grandiosity, and so on. And it's the first day of school. And we know that kids often do not like going to school. It seems like they don't want to leave home, or they're scared or something about school or what might happen, but there's a lot more going on psychologically. And you might find in some cases the parent supports the child to go through the school gate. So let's draw a sort of little school here. Actually, we'll draw the school gate, sort of old school gate like this, and there it is. And there maybe in the background is the building, and there's the main entrance, and there's the windows. I'm just bashing out of school super fast, and there's the little sign that says school, because every school, God, that's the worst writing I've ever seen in my life. School. All right, you know what I mean. Okay, so the child has to get there. Okay, now how does the child do this psychologically? Well, this is the world of self-objects. A self-object is like this. It's an object, for starters, a person or a thing, doesn't matter, that the child uses kind of like a crutch to get itself to be able to do something it is unable to do. So in this particular instance, going to school, let's say it needs to, let's put a teacher here in the gate. Teacher's a lovely teacher, smiling, welcoming. What happened there? Teacher went a bit alien-like. There's a teacher, nice smile, welcoming the kids. But for some reason, this little ego really struggles to introduce itself and socialize. So what happens is, it makes a kind of bargain with the parent. Here's the parent of the little ego, and the parent is going to do something for the ego that it can't do itself. And we introduced you to the term carry in the previous or the one before video. The parent is going to carry something for the child to allow it to be able to do something. So the child invests in the parent. This is like getting into our psychological projection, some kind of authority or power. So let's imagine mana magically being transferred into the parent, like that, from it world. And the parent is going to carry something very specific. In this case, we'll say social confidence. And what the parent's going to do particularly is going to take care of all the sort of meeting and greeting for this little child. So the parent walks over to the teacher, holding, let's put a little child here, looking very unhappy, doesn't want to go to school, holding on to the parent. There's the parent's hand. They're holding hands just there. It's my great artwork. And the child's not very happy. The parent is carrying the social confidence that this ego cannot carry for itself. And so this parent becomes a self-object, a very specific type of object in the mind of the child. It's one word, a self-object, like that. And the parent, if it's a good self-object, allows the ego to feel unpressured in this situation. So the parent walks over, hello teacher, this is my little angel, my delightful little fruit of my loins child, there, and does the introduction. And the child has little anxiety or less anxiety as long as the parent, it's not just the physical proximity, it's this part here is providing a buffer of social confidence for the little child. Now, developmentally, as the child matures, let's just start a new page for this. Ooh. Where am I? Did I write on the background layer? I think I did, like a boss. Okay, it's all right. I shouldn't be writing on the background layer. Anyway, let's just annex out a little bit of the screen here. As the child matures, so let's just draw the child a little bit bigger now. Doesn't want to hold mummy's hand anymore. There's mummy, or parent. And it's the first day of term. Now normally, mummy goes with the child, so the parent is invested with the child's mana. That's a projection. There's a little sound of a projection happening. And says to the child something like, Junior, do you want me to hold your hand and go to school with you today? Because I know you get anxious about that. And the child now, having matured, thinks about it and says, you know what, I think I can do this without you. And so withdraws the projection, psychologically speaking, withdraws it, withdraws the mana. I'm trying to draw my mana. Oh, where's my eraser? There we go. Withdraws the mana out of the parent, withdraws the parent's mouth accidentally, at least in this diagram. Let's put the parent's mouth back. And says, I don't need you to be a self-object anymore. You are no longer required, parent, for this particular task. I can do this myself. So that is your introduction to the basic idea of a self-object. It's an object, could be a parent, a person, an actual human, but it could also be a physical object. Let's look at a quick example over here. Oops, I want a black color. Let's annex off a little bit of this screen over here. Here's a little child. And instead of the parent, they're going to invest in something else, like an actual object. So in this case, this child doesn't feel much social confidence. There's an unhappy child and decides that, you know what I need? All the other kids, here are all the other kids at school. They're in a little gang. They're all hanging out together like this. And they're excluding, maybe not on purpose, but maybe accidentally, excluding this child here. And this little child notices that all these kids over here have really cool running shoes, or cool Nikes, green Nikes, because they're really in. I've never seen this before in my life. But anyway, in this school, green Nike trainers are the thing. And so this child thinks, I know what I need. Little thought bubbles. I know what I need. I need, yeah, you guessed it. I need a pair of green Nikes. Like this. That's what I need. And so the child gets himself or herself a pair of green Nikes. Like this. Now these are just physical objects to you or I, aren't they? Not in the world of the psychological self. These Nikes particularly perform a very specific function for the child. Oops, on a black color. They are self-objects. Self-objects. Meaning they perform a task that allows the self to do something that it couldn't do without them. And so they are invested in a little way with mana. Shall I put some mana in them from the psyche? Alright, I'll just put a little bit of mana. There it is, a little bit of mana. So they are special to the child. They're not just shoes. Not just shoes. These are self-objects. And these self-objects allow the child, psychologically speaking, not literally, don't think literally, allow the child psychologically to feel confident in approaching, whoops, that's a terrible error, the other kids at school. And so now we can start thinking about all the numerous self-objects that the young child needs to perform tasks in the world. Now, coming back to the original diagram here, let's just create a little bit of, actually no, we'll leave it on the page. For this ego to mature, to develop, means it has to start to be able to leave it world. And if it's not quite ready to do it itself, it creates, or uses I should say, a whole bunch of these self-objects in its life, like this, all invested with a bit of energy, a bit of mana, like that. There you go. That allow its progress out of the it world, so long as these self-objects remain and don't go away and don't go anywhere. And we'll get on to the next subject of what a bad self-object is. What happens when a self-object, you lose it or it dies or it just leaves you. Not good. Okay, so a self-object, just to recap, is a special object that allows the child or the developing ego to do something it can't otherwise do, thus allowing it to mature and evolve out of it world. All right, it's a pretty complex topic. This is just a taster, just an introduction. We'll cover it a bit more later. Please feel free to like and or subscribe. And as usual, your comments are welcome. Join me again later. Bye for now.